Welcome to our first coffee talk. I'm Anna White. I'm from the Southwestern Vermont Council on Aging. I'm the nutrition assistant and wellness coordinator there. And joining me is Faye Longo. And Faye, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. As Anna just noted, my name is Faye Longo, and I am the Associate Manager for 3Squares Vermont Community Engagement at the Vermont Food Bank, which sounds like nothing, but in short, it's my job to assure that every eligible Vermonter is not only signed up for 3Squares, but receiving the most benefit they're entitled to.
It doesn't sound like nothing. It sounds like a lot, actually, when you say your title. I'm always like, oh, she's just so magical. But that's actually really neat to kind of clarify that it is your job to make sure that every eligible Vermonter is signed up for 3Squares. So I think that's like a really good lead in, Faye. What is 3Squares Vermont for those of us who don't know? I mean, I know, but like anybody tuning in that hears 3Squares Vermont and they go like, what the heck is that?
3Squares Vermont is our state's version of what is federally called the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. People will often commonly refer to it as EBT because 3Squares Vermont benefits are received on an EBT card, which is just like a debit card. So 3Squares Vermont is a monthly benefit that eligible folks and households can use to purchase the foods that they need when they need them. And they can purchase those foods from local grocers, participating farmers markets, co-ops, even some convenience stores. And the idea behind it is that it's a supplemental benefit that folks can use to meet their nutritional needs.
I think that's a great summary. And then I also know that during the pandemic, right, we can use the benefit at Amazon Pantry, right?
Yes,
And
that's right.
Is Walmart in there? I can't remember.
I think Walmart is in there, but I think it's only the Walmart in Bennington.
Oh, okay. Well, so it's good to, kind of know that you can start using that benefit online, but I think that was a really great summary. And I think it's also probably important to note that I know that I get this question a lot, and maybe you do too, or this statement. So I work with, specifically 60 and older and younger disabled clients and their caregivers. And we always get questions or comments that people don't want to take away from others. And so I think it's probably important to note that the benefit basically won't ever run out. So if you qualify, you'll get a benefit. And if the next person qualifies, they'll get a benefit. And your benefit doesn't affect someone else's eligibility, essentially, right?
It's actually the contrary. I also hear that so often, that people are afraid that somebody else needs it more than me, or I'm not that bad off. But the opposite is true. So yes, Anna, you're absolutely right that anybody who's eligible receives a benefit. And by receiving that benefit, you're actually assuring that it's available for someone like me, like when I retire, or if I start to struggle with food security. So there's that part of it. It also benefits your local farmer. It brings federal dollars into our local food economy. It benefits your school because programs like free school lunch offerings and universal meal programs are based off of 3Squares Vermont eligibility within the school district. It helps you and your community.
That's a good point. I think that's a nice point to make. I always find it not hard, but it's kind of hard to explain to people, at least I find it, that like when you spend $1 in a food benefit, you actually bring in like $1.20 or something like that in a federal back into the community. And it's sort of hard I always find that hard to maybe work into conversations when I'm talking to people about 3Squares, because I'm like, really just like you should get the benefit because we're just gonna make Vermont more money, and that's good. But so I think that's a good, it's also nice to remind people that we're all connected, right? So I work with an older population or adults over 60, maybe not older, but those over 60. And even those people are affecting the, children and families in the community that they're in by either getting the benefit, or if they feel like, they just don't want to take away, but really they could qualify. thinking of it in this bigger picture of, well, if you qualify, then perhaps then your school district will qualify, and the kids down the street who, don't want the stigma of not being able to afford a meal or whatever are now getting a free lunch, which is a cool thought process to, I think, kind of wrap your head around.
That's one of my favorite things about 3Squares Vermont is the fact that it's about independence and choice, right? So folks are able to get this monthly benefit. They're able to go to their preferred place for shopping and get the foods that meet their dietary needs, that they prefer, like all of that stuff, right? And it has all these additional benefits by supporting your local community and your school and your farmers and the whole state.
Yeah, I think that's such a great, I don't know, zoom out picture of 3Squares. I think we always think like, oh, well, someone's getting the benefit and it's only affecting them, but it's really a huge trickle effect of it's affecting your entire community. And it is directly affecting you because it's helping you purchase more food, which is probably helping you, which is then helping, your relation, whatever it's helping in your own personal life as well. So, I think too, one of the things that I think about a lot with 3Squares and in the work that I do, I think there's a lot of stigma that comes around it. And I know in the work that you and I do and all the people that we work with around 3Squares Vermont are always trying to break down like the stigma barriers and like all the things that people are like, oh, well, 3Squares is really just a hand or whatever they think. Do you have like a specific standout stigma that you wish you could like break down forever and just say like, no, this is not true? I'm sure you have like a lot, but like, can you find maybe like one that you're like, I wish people just stopped this?
That is such a good question. And you're right. Like there are so many that it's very difficult to choose one. But I think you started to touch on something there that I think is especially true for Vermonters because we're very proud. We like to be independent. We are very hardworking. So that thought that 3Squares Vermont is somehow a handout, like not only that's false, like big, bold, shining like neon letters, that is a false statement. 3Squares Vermont is a program that every one of us has paid into over the years. Similar to Social Security. So we therefore have a right to access it if the need arises. And something I think that is especially true for older Vermonters, even though older Vermonters aren't necessarily that old, but one of the things that I find is, a lot of people rely heavily on Social Security once they retire.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'll often say to people is, 3Squares Vermont's actually kind of meant to go hand in hand with Social Security retirement because we all know Social Security retirement isn't actually enough to sustain us throughout our retirement.
Right.
So 3Squares Vermont's a great way to kind of balance that and get a little extra funding, in our pockets to our needs. So I think that would be a piece of it that thought that somehow it's a handout or not, or that you're not deserving it.
Yeah.
But I think the other biggest one though, if I'm going to choose two, there's so many more.
Yeah, that's fine. You can choose two. That's okay.
Is I think that there's this image that folks have in their head about who's 3Squares Vermont eligible. Mm-hmm. And they often think of like single moms, which is true. Single moms are, if they're income eligible, they're also 3Squares eligible, just like every other person, So I do application assistance just like you, Anna. And a lot of the people that I assist are people who are retired and receiving a pension, or who had a 401k, or who own a business, or who are still working part-time, who own their home, who have savings, who have money in a savings account, but they have that for whatever reason. Like I think that people have this image in their mind that they have to be really struggling and downtrodden to access this benefit. And one of the amazing things about it is that is just not true. You can access it and have a savings account or be working or own your home and all kinds of things.
Yeah, I think that's actually like another good point. You've made a lot but I think that is a really great one too, because I think in people's heads, they have this thought of what a recipient maybe looks like, and it's not true. And like you touched upon, I can say that in my application assistance work, I help people, and usually, couples or individuals who are on Social Security and they have worked their whole life and they're retired, and bills, like, things are only getting more expensive. The heat is going up. They need to pay for their electricity. And and a lot of them, I'm always amazed, usually because, you have to ask questions around their income and, expenses. And they are all so keenly aware of like exactly what things cost and how much they have and what is allotted to what, that it's like, that they're not, they just have worked their whole life, and that this is just something they need a little help with. And it's like, not that, I think typical person you would think, or I think people have associated for years with the program. So I think that's a really good point.
And you mentioned, Anna, something really important there, that a lot of these individuals, a lot of older Vermonters who are retired now, another cool thing about 3Squares Vermont is there are actually, and you of course know all about this, there are special rules surrounding certain populations around 3Squares Vermont. One of the things that, one of the specific ways that 3Squares Vermont can support older Vermonters is if they have high out-of-pocket medical expenses. Older Vermonters, excuse me, can, that's accounted for in their 3Squares Vermont budget. Yep. So this makes it so that more older Vermonters can become 3Squares Vermont eligible. And you actually probably know more about that than I do.
Yeah, no, it is true. And there is, like, you kind of mentioned it, there are some different income eligibility guidelines for those who are 60 and older. The medical expense, I think, is really important because I'll get on the phone and we'll say, like, okay, what's your out-of-pocket medical expense? And they'll say, like, well, I pay this for prescriptions, but it's not just a prescription or an over-the-counter medication cost. It's like, what are you paying for your supplemental health insurance, or what is your health insurance cost, or your Medicare Part B, if that's coming out of your Social Security, that actually counts as a cost as well. So it's like, there's tons of costs. So I often find that I help a lot of people who have over $200 worth of out-of-pocket medical expenses a month, or they do encounter some kind of crazy health health scare, or something happens and they have $10,000 of medical bills. And, all those things actually really count for 3Squares when you're an older Vermonter. So that's nice too. And probably nice also to mention that now the state has rolled out the SNAP application, which is I think really cool. And I think maybe sometimes a little confusing, because I think sometimes it feels like two different programs, but really it's the same program. But 3Squares and a SNAP is for anyone 6 year older or younger disabled, right?
Yep.
And they can apply if they're getting basically, if they don't have any income coming in from a job. So I hate unearned versus earned income, but essentially like working income, you're not, working currently or self-employed. So if you're earning Social Security, pensions, retirement accounts, all those things, you can apply for this SNAP program. And then if you're eligible, you then have a 3-year certification period. You don't have to do all this much paperwork, and you get a dedicated worker from the state, which I think is really cool.
I totally agree. And so the application, you're right, the application itself is simplified, so it's much shorter for those folks. And the 3-year certification period, that means that they don't have to reapply for 3 years, whereas other folks have to reapply every year.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
yes, the dedicated caseworker is so huge, especially because that population is dealing with things like the medical deduction and all these different situations where having a dedicated caseworker would really benefit them.
Yeah, and I think too, at least in my line of work, I feel like when benefits like this sometimes come in, like 3Squares or even other things, it's at a point where people are dealing with so many other things too at once that, we all want to help. So then we're like, here's everything we can help you with. So having one person that they can then go to really talk about their benefit or what's going on with it is also really helpful. And probably another important thing to note is that if a person applies for the 3Squares and a SNAP is not eligible, they still might be eligible for a regular 3Squares Vermont, but they just don't hit those parameters for the SNAP kind of side of it. So I think that's always, a good thing to kind of probably throw out there. So.
Exactly. And whether they are eligible for 3Squares and a SNAP or 3Squares, the benefit is the same thing. So right. The monthly benefit is the same thing. It's the same pool of money that's being pulled from.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. So I think this is like a good little, intro for a coffee talk. I have to not lie, I'm drinking tea, but I figured I should probably have a little coffee on my coffee talk. But so Faye, is there anything else you really like dying for people to know about 3Squares, or anything that you think maybe might be like little known facts, or just something that you think is like really great about the program that you feel that people should know?
Well, so I've already said that something I love about it is that you can use that benefit at local grocers, farmers markets. You can use it to buy seeds and starters, which is so cool. You can even use your 3Squares Vermont benefit to help you purchase a CSA, which is a community garden share.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool. The other thing, though, is that 3Squares Vermont opens the door for eligibility to many other programs, like fuel assistance is a big one for us here in Vermont. So if you're 3Squares Vermont eligible, you're likely eligible for this other program called LIHEAP or fuel assistance. That's an annual benefit that helps you cover the cost to heat your home. It also opens the door for things like Lifeline and QLink. QLink offers you like a free smartphone with, you get unlimited texting and 250 free minutes and free data. And I actually don't know a lot about Lifeline, so maybe you can talk a little bit about what that is, but that's another.
Yeah, the Lifeline is a telephone discount, and I think it's like, it ranges from $10 off a month, and then I think that it ranges based on your income. But one of the qualifiers, like you said, is you can just check a box that says you receive 3Squares Vermont, and that actually kind of auto qualifies you for the program. And then you fill out the application and send it in, which is a great, like you said, I didn't even think to mention that. You're right. If you are qualifying for the program, it does kind of open the door for all these other things, which is really cool, I guess. I think that's cool.
I think it's cool. I love that about it.
Yeah. So I think the last thing, Faye, and I'll anyone obviously that's watching this coffee talk is welcome to reach out to either me at the Council on Aging, and we'll post our information with the video, but you guys have a text line too. So if you are 60 and older and want to text in for information, or if you're any age and want to text in about the information for 3Squares, you guys have this really cool text feature thing.
Yes, so folks can simply text VFBSNAP to 85511, and it'll actually start a process where we will ask them a few eligibility screening questions to help them screen themselves, and let them know whether or not they're likely eligible. And it also provides ways to contact us if they have other questions.
That's awesome. I think sometimes it's when we talk about stigma, and I don't know, I can only speak for, I think, my generation. Sometimes a text is way less scary than a phone call, and it's a nice way to get through the door. And so, I think it's cool that you guys have that option to just be able to sort of like quick check. So, well, Faye, thank you so much for taking the time, a couple minutes to chat about 3Squares. I think obviously you and I are kind of like 3Squares nerds. I'm so I get so excited about it. I think I can see that you do too, which is awesome. And I know the people that we work with across the state, I think all fall into that category. And so, hopefully we can maybe do this again and see if more people want to chat about 3Squares.
I would love that. Thank you for having me, Anna.
All right, Faye, thanks so much.